Hello, world. My name is Daniel Marnie Elkins, and this is the Talk About It podcast. On this week's episode, we've got some very special guests and a very special opportunity. So, normally, I am hosting the conversation, interviewing people in our community from all different walks of life about the opioid epidemic. But it is so important to empower the next generation to be able to have these conversations. So, I am joined by one of Delaware's social cause influencers, Mr. Jacob Dunn, who will be conducting this podcast with our very special guests from the DEA. Jacob, the show is yours. Take it away, sir.
Thank you so much, Mr. Daniel. My name is Jacob Don. I'm from Wilmington, Delaware. I'm 16 years old, and I'm part of the Social Cause Influencers, which is a group that is dedicated to using social media positively to make the world a better place. I'm also part of the Cause production crew, which is headquartered in the Bellevue Community Center here in Wilmington. We are a full-fledged, primarily teen-led production crew. We make all kinds of videos and short films and PSAs, and it's very glad to be here. And it's so glad to meet you, Frank and Andy. How are you?
We're doing great today, and thank you for having us. Again, my name is Frank McCartney. I am the Community Outreach Specialist for the Philadelphia Field Division of the Drug Enforcement Administration. And we cover all of Pennsylvania and Delaware. So we're really happy to have this opportunity today to share with you some really important information. Our focus is on drug prevention education, and this is a great opportunity for us. I'll let Andy, my partner, introduce himself.
Hello, everyone. Hi, Jacobs. Thanks for having us today. My name is Andy Eisman. I'm a retired DEA agent, was with DEA for about 27 years and had the opportunity to come back to the Philadelphia division Philadelphia area where I was born and raised, and couldn't be a better reason to come back than to do what I'm doing, work with Frank. I'm the diversion program specialist, and I work in community outreach also. And we're just delighted to be here today with you and answer any questions you might have.
Oh, yeah, of course. I have about 6 questions prepared for you, and we're going to ask them, and they're all related to drug prevention and substance abuse in some way. Some of them are more broad, focused on the entire United States. Others are more focused on local issues, especially in Delaware and Philadelphia. So why don't we kick off this interview? I'm going to be asking you this first question. Of course, you both work for the Drug Enforcement Administration. And the mission of the DEA generally is to enforce drug control laws and regulations and to prosecute individuals who break those laws. How exactly does DEA accomplish this on both a nationwide and a state level?
I'll start the answer first and let Andy jump in. Again, we are a federal law enforcement entity, but what makes us unique is that the only type of crime that we look at is drug crimes. And as a federal law enforcement entity, we focus on the drug cartels primarily, as far as the illicit drugs are concerned. We also have an obligation to oversee the controlled substances that are administered by hospitals and medical professionals. We don't necessarily dictate how they administer the drugs, but we just keep an eye that, number one, the supply is available, and that prescribing practices are falling in line as to what is normal.
So what Frank had mentioned is absolutely true, and it's what we do. And our goal is to stop the drugs from coming in from the source countries. So when I was lucky enough to work in Colombia, we would work on the cartels down there to make sure that cocaine wasn't coming in to the United States, and that's exactly what we do now. And we make sure that the drugs don't get into our communities. So all we do is one thing, and that's drugs. And we just work on making sure that those drugs do not come into the United States. And if they do, cut them off as quickly as possible so they don't infiltrate our cities.
And as far as on the local level, we partner very often with state and local police in providing our support as far as intelligence and things of that nature are concerned.
One thing you have to think about is DEA is a very small agency, but has a very far reach. Like, for instance, the FBI has over 40,000 agents. DEA has about 4,000, actually a lot less now. So like the FBI is 10 times our size, but we have a footprint in the whole United States as well as the entire world. We're in 89 countries or 69 countries. So that's one of the things that we do too. So what we do is to increase our reach is like what Frank was saying. We have local task force, local police officers, and they just enhance our capabilities to make sure the drugs don't get into our cities, our communities.
It's very interesting. So, of course, primarily the DEA is a federal agency, but you also operate locally. And I'm sure that's something that a lot of the viewers watching at home, especially those who live around Wilmington and Philadelphia, would like to know is how exactly or the situation with drug abuse in those cities, because Wilmington, Delaware, and Philadelphia, Pennsylvania are the biggest cities in their respective states, and both of them have unfortunately seen a substantial amount of substance abuse. Could you tell us some statistics of substance misuse in each of these cities, and as well as some statistics, excuse me, on the overdose death rate?
Sure, absolutely. DEA does have an office both in Philadelphia and Wilmington. Because of where they are positioned geographically along the I-95 corridor, a lot of drug trafficking goes through both states. Statistically, as far as the amount of or the level of drug abuse, that's a hard number to capture. But I can tell you it is a issue throughout every community in Pennsylvania, in Delaware, in America. To give you an idea, as far as statistics, as far as those that we have lost to a substance use disorder or overdose, in Pennsylvania, we lost a total, and this is in the year 2022, a total of 4,703 people. In Philadelphia alone, that was 1,150, which is almost three per day, three citizens a day. In Delaware, the state of Delaware lost 537 people. I don't have specific numbers for Wilmington proper, but Newcastle County had 331 overdose deaths. Sussex County had 117, and Kent County had 89.
Yeah, that is indeed very sad. The rate of
Yeah.
substance abuse in these cities. Now, another thing related to local approaches on your under the Drug Enforcement Administration, you have a program called Operation Engage, which is an initiative dedicated to combating substance abuse by gathering local community leaders and community resources to fight it on a slightly smaller level. And Operation Engage has different sectors in various cities across the United States. One of them is Philadelphia. And under the Philadelphia sector of Operation Engage, your website mentions fentanyl as the top local drug threat. Why is this the case? And what makes fentanyl so dangerous?
Yes, Philadelphia is an Operation Engage city. Not all divisions of DEA have a Operation Engage city, so we are fortunate to have that. And what this allows us is additional funding to put into the community to focus in on drug prevention education. The reason why fentanyl was selected is because really that is the number one threat that we're looking at right now, especially in the form of counterfeit or fake pills, prescription medications made to look like the real thing, but they're not the real thing. So that's impacting a lot of our communities, especially middle school, high school, and college age students. So that's where there's a lot of focus in on that. You may have heard also about xylazine. Xylazine is a animal tranquilizer that has been mixed in with fentanyl products to extend the high of the products. However, there's usually a very adverse effect to the xylazine. It's not meant for human consumption. Should a product with xylazine be injected, often there is the chance of a decay of the soft tissue around the injection site. And if that's not taken care of, it leads to amputation. So it's a very disturbing trend that's going on. And that's why a lot of our energy and focus is towards fentanyl, the fake pills, and of course, xylazine. Andy, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, one thing to keep in mind that fentanyl is an opioid, and we are seeing 6 in 10 pills that are seized off the street contain enough fentanyl to provide a lethal dose. And those pills are not what they're purported to be. If it says it's Percodan or Percocet, it's not. It's just a pill with fentanyl, and there's no rules or regulations. So the traffickers put in whatever fentanyl it is. There's no, as I said, there's no rhyme or reason. And 2 milligrams of fentanyl is all you need to provide a lethal dose. And as I said, 6 and 10 pills that we're seeing contain that. Another thing where Frank had brought up xylazine, and a very disturbing part is if you see someone that is overdosing on fentanyl, you can give them a drug called Narcan that will bring them back. And it's very effective. However, if that drug has xylazine, Narcan is not effective because xylazine is not an opioid, and Narcan only works with an opioid. So we're running into people that are not overdosing on the fentanyl because they're giving the life-saving drug of Narcan, but they're overdosing on xylazine. And xylazine is showing up on an extremely high percentage of the fentanyl that is seized in the Philadelphia and Wilmington area. In fact, xylazine has been seen in all but 2 states in the entire country. I believe it's either North or South Dakota and Wyoming, or I think that's the only 2, and I would be surprised if it's not there by now. But it is an extremely difficult thing that we're facing, and one of the things that we wanted to make sure that we get out to you, to your audience, is make sure everyone knows that if they're not getting a pill by a pharmacist or a doctor or hospital, it's not real. It's just not. And we hear about stories every day about kids using social media, going out on Instagram, Snapchat, whatever it is, and buying these drugs, and they are just not the real thing. So if you take anything away from what we're saying today, or your audience, do not trust any pills that you do not get from a professional, a licensed, registered place, if that makes sense.
Of course, and I appreciate your very detailed response. And you actually mentioned elements of the next couple questions I'm going to ask you. But as a follow-up to that previous question, you mentioned fentanyl use, but something that the podcast talk about, it focuses on partially, and the social cause influencers and the cause production crew, both organizations I'm a part of, is youth, teenagers, adolescents. And that's why, as a follow-up, do you know the statistics on the usage of fentanyl and other related drugs among youth, especially teenagers?
Not necessarily, but we will tell you that over the last 4 to 5 years, the use of opioids in teenagers has risen.
And that's a really, really good question. I guess overall, what I would like to say to the young people is that the whole landscape of illicit drugs has changed dramatically in the last 5 years. So fast that a lot of times we can't keep up with a lot of the most updated statistics. But I can tell you, previous generations would sort of look at drug experimentation as a rite of passage. That is no longer the case for your generation, because what you're looking at is a drug supply that is really polluted with fentanyl. And it's many different types of drugs. It can be heroin, obviously, cocaine, methamphetamine, a variety. It's been found in everything. And like Andy said, there's no way of telling how much of fentanyl is in any type of product, whether that's a pill or cocaine or whatever. But it really doesn't take much to kill you. So again, what we're finding now is that the drug supply is really toxic. Also, the availability and accessibility because of online platforms has made it so much easier for young kids to get their hands on it. And that's why Andy and I are really driven to talk to as many young people as we can. And we're really thankful for you and your program to get the word out that it is a super high risk behavior at this point to consume any type of drug.
Indeed, it's very disturbing information regarding fentanyl. You also mentioned another drug called xylazine, and a quick Google search for xylazine will turn up a number of articles and resources that say it is a drug that's growing in popularity quite exponentially across not only in Delaware and this Northeast region, but across the entire United States. More and more people are using it. Could you give us some information on why is xylazine? What are the negative effects on the body, and some potential reasons why it is becoming so exponentially popular across the United States?
Sure. A couple of things. I mean, with fentanyl, when that came on the scene and really replaced heroin, it was a much more cheaper drug, a synthetic, a man-made drug, not needing any growing time or acreage to grow. It could be made quickly. Okay. The biggest difference for the heroin user, for example, when they turn to use fentanyl, is that the high that fentanyl gave them was much shorter than a heroin high. So for years, xylazine has been used, I think originated mainly in Puerto Rico, and then Philadelphia was a super big market for it. But what xylazine does, when mixed with fentanyl, it gives you that high and it extends it for a longer period of time. But like Andy had mentioned earlier, it's very dangerous. It's not meant for human consumption. The body responds to it poorly. And again, the procedures used to try to prevent the overdose are not responsive to the non-opioid xylazine. Do you have any more?
No, that's 100% right. Xylazine is an animal tranquilizer. If you take your dog to the vet and get his teeth cleaned, chances are there's a good chance they might use xylazine. It's also used in herd animals, it's a tranquilizer. So, and the one thing is, and I mentioned it before, and I think it bears repeating, and Frank said is, it's Narcan resistant. So people that are overdosing on fentanyl and they're not responding, there's a very good chance that xylazine is in it. And xylazine, traffickers will put the xylazine in the fentanyl to do one thing, to extend the high, because people that are drug seekers who want to get drugs for the sake of becoming high, or they have a substance abuse disorder, they want it because it's going to increase the level of that effect.
Yeah, so of course it would obviously be very fortunate for an individual to overdose on xylazine because, as you mentioned, Narcan is not very effective. But my next question is regarding Narcan. It has been marketed as a potentially life-saving medication. A number of prevention groups and organizations that I've witnessed have promoted Narcan, and I would like to know, what is the DEA's stance on Narcan and its effectiveness in general?
We fully support Narcan, and as a matter of fact, we have an upcoming National Take Back Day where people bring their prescription drugs and anonymously drop them off. As a safety practice, we will have Narcan available at each location site in case there is an inadvertent overdose or injection of some sort of opioid, not intentional, of course. But yes, we do support it. We support treatment. We support recovery. Andy and I, because of the work we do, we work within the community, and there's a lot of our partners that don't necessarily work in the prevention lane, but work in the treatment and the recovery lane. And I've learned a lot from those folks about understanding substance use disorder as a whole. So it's three different lanes working together with different aspects of the issue.
And Narcan is a life-saving drug. We've talked to people that have been literally brought back to life several times with Narcan. So, yeah, thank God for Narcan, because without it, we'd be in even more trouble than we are now.
Yeah.
Oh, that's very interesting. I'm glad to hear that a drug and a medication like Narcan is finally available that is so effective. My final question for this interview has to do with the opioid crisis, which unfortunately has overtaken the entire country. Hardly any place in this country is immune from the opioid crisis. According to various resources, and I believe according to the DEA itself, in 2022, around 100,000 people died from opioid overdoses, which is just a staggering number. Just a tenth of a million people have died from opioid overdoses in just 1 year. And of course, a number of these people obviously have previously engaged in a lot of substance misuse. But it's imperative, as you would agree, that we end the opioid crisis as soon as possible, which is why my concluding question for this interview is, You are members of the DEA, so you would obviously be knowledgeable about this. What are some resources that people can use to learn more about the opioid crisis and some statistics, as well as strategies that everyone can use to fight the opioid crisis on a national, state, and local level in their communities?
It's a great question. And like you said, nationally, I think it was close to 108,000 people. And I think that comes down to 292 people a day. It's a lot of Americans to lose on a daily basis to opioid, especially synthetic opioids. The trend is growing, it's not going in the right direction. Unfortunately, there's a demand in our country for drugs, for illicit drugs. And what DEA is trying to do, along with combating the cartels, is to reduce the demand through education, through drug prevention education. And I personally am a great proponent for drug prevention education and involvement, like you, with teenagers in the topic in our schools and in our communities. It's really, really an important topic to understand because many kids just don't have the information. And if you don't have the right information, making a good decision is difficult. So providing information is most important and most key. DEA has a lot of information on their websites. If you go to www.dea.gov, you will be able to find information on a lot of our initiatives, whether that's National Take Back or the One Pill Can Kill initiative. You'll be able to see the numbers of fentanyl pills that we're seizing, how many pounds of fentanyl that we're seizing, how much fentanyl it takes to result in an overdose death. So all that information is available there as well. Other online services that we promote would be getsmartaboutdrugs.com, operationprevention.gov, Just Think Twice for teenagers especially.com is a great website. So again, there's a lot of resources out there. We share all these resources with our partners because Andy and I, we cover a lot of area within Pennsylvania and Delaware, and we depend heavily on partners like Bellevue Community to help us share information regarding prevention. So I hope I answered your question.
No, it was very good, yeah.
Oh, of course, yeah. That was very valuable information regarding the opioid epidemic. Thank you so much. That was the last question. But before we officially end this episode of Talk About It, is there any other concluding comments that you would like to say? Just any last minute remarks that you would like our viewers to hear?
Nothing more than, I really do appreciate your involvement, and I would like to further the partnership that we have with the youth in Delaware. Andy and I are planning a DEA Teen Leadership Academy. It'll be our third one. That'll be later this year. And I really would like to maybe brainstorm with you and maybe some of your partners on what your ideas would be as far as what a good summit would look like. It's something that we want to create on a grassroots level, but in a way that would impact the teens that are there and then have them help us spread information that we have to their school communities, etc. So that would be a great opportunity. So I hope we can connect again.
Oh, of course. It sounds great. Thank you so much. For our viewers listening at home, again, that was Frank and Andy from the Philadelphia branch of the Drug Enforcement Administration. Again, I really sincerely appreciate all your information regarding drug misuse and substance abuse. And I have no doubt that with the knowledge that you provided, well, not only me, but also the viewers at home, we can all do our part in combating substance misuse and abuse nationwide. Thank you so much, Frank and Andy.
You're great.
Thank you.
Take care.